I want to start this video by taking you all the way back to August of 2024, the release of Attack on Titan Battle for Humanity. One of the strongest characters in that set was Mikasa Ackerman. 7 hand size, 23 health. She can discard a card to clear her card pool. Her attacks are getting faster and faster. She's never really having to play on more than +1 progressive unless her rival is forcing her to do so with interaction pieces. She can also refill her hand at the cost of committing a foundation anytime one of her attacks deal damage. And there were really no guardrails put around this character. And so players very, very quickly started creating crazy interactions using cards like Lightning Rod to build in foundations on turn 2, using cards like Beast Summoning to do Beast Summoning loops where you can pay 4 life to pick one up from your discard, play it, clear your other Beast Summoning, and just repeat as long as you have 4 health to keep on grabbing them. And this was leading to a very high rate of turn 2 kills right out of the gate in early player testing. And so UVS Games made a decision that they have never made before in my time as a player. This has been the only time they made it. And they errataed Mikasa Ackerman without data to back it up, without competitive data, only based on player sentiment. And it wasn't just Mikasa. They also came after a character, Reiner Braun, who was a little too consistent at ruining his rival's stage. It was just a feels bad to play into. Now, they didn't absolutely demolish the characters. They took a very soft approach to it. And I really, really appreciated that they did this. I wish they would do it more often. Right now, there's characters like Nick Reagan that I wish they would just, even though he hasn't won an event yet, I'm speaking about the character, not the player. I love the player, but I think the character's too overtuned. I wish they would just go in and make some adjustments just based off of player sentiment. I don't think you always need the competitive data to back it up. We're a small game. Data is hard to come by. So they took a soft approach to errataing Mikasa 1. All they changed was saying that she could now only clear weapon cards. Nothing else says she has to play only weapons. You know, even her non-weapon attacks still get the speed, and even when her non-weapon attacks deal damage, she still gets to draw. But at the time, the weapons available to her back in August were not that great. When you went back and looked at like the weapons from the My Hero Academia sets that were on like air and fire, you were looking at like Moonfish's kit. There were some good chaos weapons like Walk the Dog. There's some good like fire weapons like Rapid Speed Slash. And maybe if you could play them together, if they were like attuned, then you could put together a pretty solid attack lineup. But you were having to sacrifice a lot of value in your attack lineup based on this errata. Because while not every attack needs to be a weapon attack, probably about 75-80% of your attack lineup should be to continuously have that clear available to you. But since that time, now that we've had several months go by, we've had 2 extra sets come out, Attack on Titan Origins of Power and Critical Role Heroes of Exandria. And in those 2 sets, we have 58 new attacks available on the air and fire symbols for Mikasa. Of those 58 new attacks, 40 of those are weapons. It seems that every attack being printed these days is getting hit with the weapon keyword by UVS Games. So that makes a clean 69% of new attacks in the last several months have been weapon attacks available to Mikasa on her symbols. But it's not just about quantity. She had a pretty solid quantity of attacks available to her before. It's just the quality wasn't that great. So what's the quality like of these new attacks? Well, let's look at some of them. Mighty Blitz, Sweeping Daggers, Violent Animus Shot, Connie's Sword Strike, Survey Corps Teamwork, Defeating the Colossus Titan, Lethal Slash, and I could even go on. It's fair to say that the quality of these weapon attacks has been very, very high. So this caused me to wonder, is Mikasa back? You know, a lot of times players in this game tend to run away from characters as soon as they get an errata. And I think that's because in the past, UVS Games was very heavy-handed with their erratas. But the soft approach to Mikasa, I think she could be an A-tier character again. Perhaps a top 15 top 20 character in the game. So I wanted to put this theory to the test. And so the day before my local championship, I created a Mikasa list. I put together this list. I played exactly 1 round of practice, and then I went to my local championship. Now, I didn't just create this list out of thin air. I looked at a lot of other Mikasa lists that were available. And to be honest, there were some choices being made that I didn't agree with. So I'll point out how my list differs from other Mikasa lists that maybe you could find. First of all, a lot of them were playing Airy Smiles, a defensive action. And the way I wanted to build Mikasa was as a very aggressive, I kill you on turn 2 a good chunk of the time, but I'll always kill you by turn 3. So I want to full send aggro. And that means that when I'm looking at other Mikasa lists and I see like 10 or 12 cards dedicated to defense, I just want those out. I see those as hindering the consistency of my turn 2 aggro. Defense is not what I'm here for. I think I can time 1 or 2 blocks on turn 2 to survive to see my next turn. So I took out, let's see, let me get my mouse here. I took out Airy Smiles and replaced it with Support of Your Friends. So I'm taking out this defensive action. I think Airy Smiles is a feels good card and not actually a real good card. I'll talk about that in a video coming, what I mean by feels good cards versus real good. But Support of Your Friends is a sneak attack, +2/+2 on an attack, and it removes itself, or it can be a form, draw 2 cards. But most of the time we're using that for that sneak attack +2/+2. It's so valuable. Your rival never sees this coming. They can pour their speed, resources into an attack to make it just blockable if they check a 5, and then wham, you hit them with Support of Your Friends. They can no longer block it, and it's 2 damage. This is also going to help fuel Luna Teharis, our only non-weapon attack in the list. Of course, we're clearing on face with Mikasa. Now this is removing. Luna Teharis doesn't matter that it's removing. It's just looking for cards that have left your card pool, so it still counts. We can also use things like Lethal Slash to kind of take the pressure off of us constantly discarding to clear. You'll notice that one of the attacks I didn't put in here was Wish Hard. I think that Wish Hard is quite bad in Mikasa 1, honestly. I would almost always rather have an attack in my hand that I want to play rather than I want to discard. I think just running Feral Shrieks is plenty. Yes, the 2-check is a real cost, but Lethal Slash is taking a lot of pressure off of our hand here to keep our card pool clear. And then I noticed that the other Mikasas were like scared of playing high difficulty attacks. And they were scared to do that because you're thinking, if I want to win on turn 2, I need everything to be low difficulty. That's a very like mindset from the My Hero Academia era of the game, I would say. And I really wanted to try out Strong Wind-Up, this new card from Critical Role that says after you make a check to play a card with printed 6 difficulty or greater, that your check gets +3, to where you could lead off with defeating the Colossus Titan, I think probably the best attack in the entire attack lineup. And even if you check a 3, now you check a 6. But also Strong Wind-Up gets to pair really well with like Luna Teharis because it says printed 6 difficulty. So even if we're playing Luna Teharis as a 2 difficulty at the very end of an attack string and check poorly, we can still use Strong Wind-Up. We can also use this for like defense. It just says to play a card. So even if we're playing these as blocks, we can still get like +3 to our check to block. And then Walk the Dog also works, even if it's a 4 difficulty attack. Because it's a printed 8, it still works with Strong Wind-Up. So I really wanted to try this out at a 3x here. And Luna Teharis is always our finisher at the very end. But defeating the Colossus Titan is our very best opener in the deck. Mikasa's attacks get faster and faster as the turn goes on, but her openers tend to be quite slow. So you play defeating the Colossus Titan, and it's an 11 speed, 6 damage move. And a lot of the times, since we're only a 23 health character, it's not that hard to hit us to less than half health. Plus we get to lose 5 just on this card itself. Then this is a 11 high for 10, and it's a powerful 3 outlet. So now you have 6 attacks with powerful 3. So to get the momentum for these powerful 3 attacks, we have cards like Connie's Sword Strike, which when they're cleared, they go to your momentum, or High Velocity Slice to play it and just snap your momentum. And You could change these if you want to. Maybe instead of Sword Strike, you want to play that Survey Corps Teamwork. Probably more consistent value there. But I just like the design of Connie Sword Strike, so I wanted to play it. And then Sweeping Daggers. If you've watched any of my contents, you know that I think this is basically the best attack in the game, bar none. And other Mikasas were choosing not to play it because sometimes it feels relatively blank on turn 2 because your rival doesn't have the goods in their discard pile quite yet. But what I was finding is always by turn 3, Sweeping Daggers was typically great, and it was just outright winning me a lot of games. What I would do with Lethal Slash and Sweeping Daggers is I would main board 3, and then if I felt like it was a good matchup for it, I would side in a 4th, or I could side them out for a different attack. Like if they weren't playing any good targets for Sweeping Daggers, which first of all, hallelujah, that means their attack lineup is quite bad. We're probably going to be winning that game. But, if there's no great targets for Sweeping Daggers or not many of them, we can always just side them out for something else. And Lethal Slash, like if I win game 1, for example, and now I'm going second, well, going second, I'm not as scared of a 2 check because even if I lead with like strong wind up on a 3 and I check the 2, I can always commit Mikasa to pass the check. There's not a real reason to keep Mikasa ready for defense. So I can side in my 4th Lethal Slash and feel a lot more comfortable about it. And I might just want to go a little more aggressive. That might be a little counterintuitive, going second to go more aggressive. But a lot of times that means that your turn 2 is going to be more consistent because your builds are going to be more consistent. So I might put a 4th one in there. And then I've got 1 copy of Violent Animus Shot. This probably should have been a 2 or 3, but to be honest with you, I only own 1. And that's why it's only at a 1 here. And then 2 copies of Whirling Slash. Most of the time, I'm not committing 3 foundations. I'm just committing 1 foundation for 1 speed to this, 1 speed to the next one, and I get to draw a card. But sometimes you get to commit 3 foundations and then follow up with like your Walk the Dog or something. And now it's 3 less difficulty and it's 9 speed. They're probably not going to be blocking that. So that is my thinking on the attack lineup. I'm trying to go all aggro, and I don't want to play bad attacks. And that's what I was seeing when I was looking at a lot of, other Mikasa lists, is just like seeing a lot of subpar attacks. And we're really relying on Mikasa to make the engine work. But I didn't want to be afraid of great attacks like defeating the Colossus Titan. And so in our foundation lineup, everything is focused on readying because we want to play out our whole hand on turn 2. And we want to be drawing cards when we need to with that bottom response. We're not just always using that bottom response when an attack deals damage, but we're using it when it's needed. And so we have cards like Defiant Stance, where we can commit it and to pay that cost and then re-ready it. Defiant Stance does not work with Whirling Slash because the committing is part of the effect, but it does work with Mikasa. So I got 3x Defying Stance, and then I've got 4x Mother's Embrace. Whenever we clear, we get to ready. 3x Weightless to ready a face down. I could probably take this to a 4x, honestly. And then like pushing the advantage to draw for a little extra draw here. Banshee Sword Streak for a little extra damage. Pressured by All for 1 for a lot of extra damage. Most of our everything is weapons, so we can destroy 2 foundations once they're committed, and now give something 3 damage. I always felt good having this out. And then the MVP of the deck in the foundation lineup is unquestionably incompatible quirks. This thing counts as like 3 or 4 foundations when you have it out. So I have it at a 3x, even though it's unique, because I always want to find it. Honestly, if you wanted to take it to a 4x, I wouldn't even blame you. But I certainly wouldn't take it below a 3x. And then I've got Radiant Visage, Never Leave Home Without Utterly Free Momentum Hate. This comes in handy so often. And then Crowd's Darling. I put this at a 1x. I thought it was cute. It worked when it was in stage, one of my games. Another game, it was my rival's Kraken. That was what they wanted to freeze, what they were scared of. First form, we can discard a momentum. Our checks to play weapon attacks get +1 for the rest of the turn. So now we're definitely going to be just playing every single attack we draw, or enhance commit if your attack deals damage, add the top card of your deck to momentum, and then you can follow up with like a walk the dog. And it's like a commit for 3 damage there. I was just kind of messing with it. You could take it out if you want. And then 4x Feral Shriek. We've got to have this discard, respond, draw, outlet, but it's so much better than Wish Hard because it checks a 5. Well, Wish Hard checks a 3. Okay, so that is the idea behind the Mikasa deck. How did I actually do? We had 13 players for our local championship at Stormcrow Games, and I ended up coming in second place. In my round 1, I played against my brother, who was on Nick Reagan, and I won 2-1. I honestly probably should have lost, but he milled some great attacks to go after with sweeping daggers on his first turn, like game 2. It was just awesome. And then round 2, I went against Godzilla, and I won that round. And then round 3, I went against Devil Jin, and on that one I got a loss. Came close though. The games were very, very even, but came up a little short. Lost against Devil Jin. And then in round 4, I went up against Younger Toguro and took those down. And I would say that throughout Swiss, about 70% of my games were ending on turn 2. Not an exaggeration. Either I'm killing you on turn 2 or you are killing me on turn 2, but most often it's me killing you on turn 2. And then we go to single elimination in round. The Devil Jin player couldn't stay around for single elimination. So even though he was in first place in Swiss, he had to drop, which made me into top seeds for single elimination. So in round 1, I went up against, Mitchell. Good Mitchell. It was a very, very interesting Mitchell list. Ended up taking that one 2-1. And then in round 2 in the championship, I had a rematch against my brother's Nick Reagan list. And in that one, I got taken down, and Nick Reagan won the local championship. But I think that with a little more time with Mikasa and a little more iterations, that she's definitely back. The deck felt really, really strong, and more weapons are going to be coming in Attack on Titan Apocalypse, and I'm sure in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So yes, I do think that Mikasa is probably back to being bare minimum a top 25 character. Now, is she better than, for example, like Air Pony? I'm not sure. I think Mikasa is a little more efficient on offense, but I think Pony having the defense on face of being able to change a rival attack zone and giving something -2 speed, it just gives you a tiny bit more efficiency at staying alive, and you don't lose a lot of your offense. So take your pick between Pony and Mikasa. I think they're both extremely potent aggro 7-handers right now that you should probably be aware of going into Albuquerque. I don't think there's going to be a ton of them out there, but I think there's going to be at least a few, and it's something just to keep in your mind and be ready for. So that is going to do it for this deck profile today. I hope you enjoyed this. I would love to hear your comments on this video and what you think of my deck and what changes you would make for Mikasa. Do you want this character to come back into the meta, or is this design of this character just lends itself to turn 2 kills, and is she eventually going to need another errata to maybe up the costs once there's tons of different weapon attacks for her to choose from? Then errataing her to only being able to pick from weapon cards isn't really an errata. Are they going to have to do something more in the future? Right now, I don't think she's in danger of that. I don't think she's top 5 or anything. That's not what I'm saying in this video. Don't get it twisted. But I am saying that she's probably top 25 and on the rise for future sets. All right, that's going to do it for me. I will be back here in a couple days, opening up some Attack on Titan Apocalypse. And like I mentioned earlier, making a video about feels good cards versus real good cards. And I hope that sparks some fun debate in the comments. But that's going to do it for me. I'll see you guys next time.